Okay, so just wanted to kind of do another recording here real quick of the angles that we were going to learn today in class. My previous video failed, so we're going to get going with this one, but it should be pretty quick. Hopefully we don't take forever to kind of get this done. All right, so today we are learning about 4 different kinds of angle relationships. Okay, 4 different names. Some of them are the same kind of relationship, but just different names and anything. Anyway, so those 4 angles are a linear pair of angles, vertical angles, supplementary angles, and complementary angles. Okay, so let's kind of go through some of these here. And again, we'll do it kind of quick. You can pause the video if you need to kind of read things or copy things down. All right, but I'll just kind of run through things. So the definition for a linear pair, well, it comes right from the word linear pair. So pair means 2. So it's a pair of angles or 2 angles that form a line. Linear pair, right? Linear means line, pair means 2. And so you can see a little picture here that I made where we have 2 angles, okay, that form this straight line or straight angle you can think of too. I went ahead and numbered them 1 and 2. And so because these 2 angles form a straight line, that means their measures are going to add up to 180 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180 degrees. All right. For an example of this in action, we can start with something like this, where we say that angle A and angle B form a linear pair. All right, so we have that information to start out, and we're asked to find the measure of angle A and the measure of angle B, given here that the measure of angle A is 3x minus 9, the measure of angle B is x minus 5. So how can we relate these two things, right? So 3x minus 9 and x minus 5, if they're a linear pair, that means those 2 angles have to add up to 180 degrees. And so we set up our equation here. 3x minus 9 plus x minus 5 equals 180 degrees. Combine like terms, solve for x, and you get x is 48.5. Okay, that's not our answer though, right? Because the directions didn't say solve for x. The directions said find the measure of angle A and the measure of angle B. So now that we know that x is 48.5, we can plug that in. Make it 3 times 48.5 minus 9, see? And that equals 136.5. Once you know angle A, it's not necessary for us to go ahead and plug that 48.5 in for x here to find angle B. You could, right? So, I mean, we could, 48.5 minus 5 is going to be 43.5 degrees. However, since we also know that angle A and angle B are a linear pair, they add to 180 degrees. Well, if we know that angle A is 136.5, we can subtract that from 180 degrees and get angle B, which is 43.5 degrees. Okay, so 2 ways of getting that angle B once you know angle A. All right, once you know one angle in a linear pair, you know the other one too, right? Because you can just subtract from 180 to get the other one. All right, so that's linear pair. All right, the next angle pair that we talked about was vertical angles. All right, now I'm not going to give you the official geometric definition for vertical angles just yet. I'll describe how they're kind of made first and what they look like, and then we'll talk about what their official geometry definition is. Vertical angles are angles that are created by 2 intersecting lines. So here's line 1, there's another line right there. You can see by intersecting these 2 lines like this, I've created 1, 2, 3, 4 angles, okay? Angles 1 and 3 are vertical angles. So are angle 2 and 4. Okay, yes, I know 2 and 4 are not vertical to each other, but the idea is more like an opposite idea. They're opposite from one another, okay? More importantly, though, the official geometric definition of vertical angles is that vertical angles are angles whose sides are opposite rays. Angles whose sides are opposite rays. So in other words, 1 and 3 we said were vertical angles. How can we tell? This side of angle 1 is an opposite ray to this side of angle 3. This side of angle 1 is an opposite ray to this side of angle 3. And the same is true for the sides of 2. They're opposite rays to the sides of angle 4. The key thing here about vertical angles is that vertical angles are congruent. Okay, so we know that 2 and 4 will be the same measure, 1 and 3 will be the same measure because they're vertical angles. Over here, I set up a little problem where I said, okay, angle 1 is equal to 3x plus 5. This angle 3 I said was equal to 87, and I wanted to solve for x. Since angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical, we can set them equal to each other, solve for x, and I get a 27.3 repeating, okay? So that decimal repeats. All right. Next, supplementary angles. Okay, supplementary angles are angles whose sum is 180 degrees. And it's specifically two angles whose sum is 180 degrees. Okay, they may or may not be next to one another. So a linear pair, two angles that are next to each other that form a straight line. Supplementary angles also add up to 180 degrees, just like the linear pair, but they don't have to necessarily be next to one another. Okay, so M and N, again, here's just an example problem. We're given M and N are supplementary. We're told the measure of angle M is 3x. The measure of angle N is x plus 8, and find x, right? So we can add M together with N and add them up to make 180. Combine like terms and solve, you get x is 43. Okay, just using that property there. The last angle that we'll talk about in this lesson is complementary angles, or are complementary angles. Okay, so two angles whose sum is 90 degrees. That's the definition of complementary angles. Two angles that add up to 90 degrees. And again, they may or may not be adjacent or next to one another. Okay, so again, here's a little example. Measure of angle A is 5x plus 8. Measure of angle B is x plus 4. Find x. So you add these two things together, set it equal to 90, solve for x, you get x is 13. All right. One thing that can get a little bit tricky here once you have these four relationships is to get them confused, especially these two, complementary and supplementary. Okay, and it's because they sound so similar and they're very closely related, but they're not the same thing, right? Supplementary, two angles that add up to 180. Complementary, two angles that add up to 90 degrees. An easy way, or a way that I would always remember it, is that complementary comes first alphabetically, right? A, B, C. And then 90 degrees, the number 90 comes first numerically in numeric order, right? So complementary 90, supplementary comes second alphabetically, and 180 degrees comes second numerically. And that's kind of the way you can remember those two angle relationships. Okay, so we'll stop the video there, and hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in class.